Oh, thank you so much. Well, I'm Juan Boido. I'm originally from Argentina. I'm the marketing innovation lead for Eggo brand, currently here at Kellogg's. Before it was Pop-Tarts. And before that, I come from the alcohol industry, both in beer and spirits. So lots of fun stuff, but now quite a change, different products, same frameworks, same cultural needs. At the end of the day, it's about cracking that code. So same excitement for what I do.
Lovely. So tell us, what does culture mean to you, and how does that impact your day to day?
It's funny. I apply a very rigorous understanding of culture in terms of what it means. And again, me having studied law at some point, comes from Latin. Actually, it means cultivate, it means tend. So actually you need to nurture that, and actually it's a flow, a continuum of elements that not define you, but are who you are. It's a behavioral component of who we are. And that's basically the code that you need to crack when you actually address yourselves, talk about something, sell something. You want to tap into that. So for me, what it means, it's a component of mainly four, I know there's five, but mainly four elements, which is language, symbols, norms, and values. And all of that creates all together, by the way. Don't try to dissect it, because that's when you get in niches and places. You need to address it holistically. That's how you actually tap into a person's true needs for culture and connect with that person at the emotional level. So for me, culture is basically an essential component of who we are and what we need, what we want, and where we want to go, and where we come from, which is as equally important.
Lovely. I couldn't put it better, so thanks. So looking at innovation specifically, can you tell us a bit more about the realms of innovation that you're involved in, and also if you've seen a difference in how brands address it throughout the last decades, and particularly since the pandemic?
Yes, and that's a great question, because the pandemic changed the dynamic of how to actually bring innovations to life, because you need to drive that. As a marketer, again, it's by the penetration or buy rate, right? Those are the problems of a marketer. So when you do an innovation, you're trying to actually bring something new into the marketplace. So how you do that, the pandemic created a lot of constraints. And that in itself is well, how can I share this innovation with the audience, with my consumers, if I don't have the space because they're locked down in their homes, or they cannot reach the store, or whatever that may be. And you've seen that in the market in the past 2 years, many innovations failed, not probably because there were bad ideas, it's just because they didn't get the trial they deserve, or they needed to be nurtured, going back to this cultivate concept. So when you don't have that opportunity, you need to actually tap more into the cultural in the pull side, instead of less of the push, more of the pull. So try to actually tap into that pull. How do you do that? Through culture. When marketers give this brief to agencies, make it cool. Well, what does it mean to be cool? That you're tapping into a cultural element, whether it's something that a segment, it could be a generation, it could be gender, it could be whatever that may be that you're tapping into. Everyone has those four elements of culture. So they have the sets of norms, sets of values, language, and symbols. So how do you talk to them? What are you trying to convey? What are you trying to tap? That's the key to, in my opinion, how during the pandemic, people were trying on great brands with no heritage, by the way. So that's when you see that they did it, that they achieved it. They tapped into those cultural elements to actually get the pull and be an absolute success despite the pandemic. So they bought it online. So getting an innovation to be tried online, that's awesome. You haven't touched the product and you're buying it online. Well, that's because of the cultural element. And when you see brands, and we'll talk about it later probably, but when you see brands with no heritage at all, zero heritage, coming out of the blue and taking over a lot of market share, that means that actually they tapped into something big of culture. And we can name many examples. So the challenge for big brands is, how do you actually stay relevant, stay cool? It's basically culture. At the end of the day, the cool factor is culture. It's a cultural one.
Yeah, and I like how you say, look, culture means a lot of things, and a lot of different things to different people. But I think particularly during the pandemic is how we go beyond the geographic sort of link of culture. It's more looking into tribes and communities and subcultures. And you're right. I think the brands that succeed are the ones that understand that level of granularity.
And I think you nailed it. That's pretty much the task at hand. Crack the code and scale it. So when you talk about a domestic market and then you want to go globally, you're scaling. And in a globalized world, the beauty of it is that those sets of norms, values, symbols, and languages, social media, like people communicate through emojis today, like less words, more emojis. And like that already connects two cultures, if you will. And that's when actually the pollination happens and you start getting scale. You want to navigate that like sweet spot between mainstream and cultural niche, because you don't want to be monocultural. You want to be polycultural, if you will, to actually get that scale. But you also want to create impact and make it something authentic, which we'll talk about. But that's when you navigate into like get into that sweet spot. And as you crack that code and go deeper into the insights, start with the consumer, like classic marketing framework, really go deep, crack those 4 elements, connect them, and then you can scale them. That's pretty much the job to be done to get the sales at the end of the day.
You make it sound so easy.
We're not reinventing the wheel here. No, it sounds like it's not rocket science. It's like football. Like it's 11 players each side. You need to score to win. Then you can have systems and stuff. But at the end of the day, the essence is the same.
Yeah, love the analogy. So in the FMCG or food and beverage, more specifically industry, there's a lot of talk around customer or consumer centricity. And we are creative culture focused on culture centricity. And I believe fundamentally it's the same thing. And what you described really well, it's about this understanding of the people, the context that surrounds them, and making sense of it in granularity to then build upon those insights. What do you feel are the current limitations in the FMCG industry due to the lack of understanding of culture, and where are the opportunities?
100%. There's the limitations in itself. I think you kind of alluded to them, which is many companies actually think demographically. So in a demographic approach, like I'm in the US, so I'm the US market, right? Like, and I want to win with multicultural. Well, and I'm thinking like, this is US market, forget Mexico, forget Canada. Well, if you actually want to win with the multicultural landscape, which is the future, if not the present of the United States, of this country, you got to start looking like, well, the multicultural landscape in Canada, like very Asian focused. And by Asian, I mean, there's a lot of ethnicities within the Asian culture. So let's not minimize it. Let's like 28. It's a beautiful world, but very different than the United States landscape. But if you want to get ahead of the game with the Asian community, look at Canada. If you want to win with Latinos in the United States, well, look at Mexico. Like 65% of Latinos in this country are from Mexican descent. So there's a lot, and there's no border. As much as they want to make us believe, there's no border. So like there's a lot of psychographic components that needs to be addressed to actually tap into consumers, because we're people. We're not robots, machines, like we're people. So it's less about the demographics and switching and leapfrogging into psychographics, which at this point, by the way, is table stakes. So what we're trying to do, at least what I try to do, is push it even further, like go into the cultural space, because psychographics is just one layer of behavioral science, if you will. Culture is like going deep in who you are and what you bring. Like, what are you bringing from who? And we're saying this at the beginning, where you come from, where you're going. It's not defined by culture, because you can change people. The oldest tradition is that things change. That's the way it is. And same as people. But the thing is, how do you actually tap into something that it's truly quintessential to who you are, that actually will lead to that behavior? So if anything, you're getting to the holy grail when actually like tapping into culture, because it's like the ultimate consumer insight that everything else trickles down. Why is something cool to that culture? Again, by culture, you can talk about an age segment, a generation, like millennials, Gen Zs. You can talk about Latinos, Argentinians, or whatever. Doesn't matter. You apply the framework, you crack the code, you make it work together, and that's the strong insight. Everything else that you execute is going to be extremely relevant once you crack that code.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was mentioning early on the notion of acting before it's too late, right? There's a lot of sense of, oh, we should have thought about this, or it being a bit of an afterthought. How do you feel about this stage of sort of cultural understanding to feed the innovation? And do you feel that a lot of clients oversee that part, or maybe your experience is different, that this is getting better?
I am the change. I'm trying to be the change, but I've seen it many times in my career. Again, like people think whether it's an innovation, a campaign, and by innovation, not just a product, to be a campaign, a TV ad, whatever it may be, usually it's an afterthought. Again, it's a translation. Let's pick that example. Like, hey, I want to do this TV spot or like this product, and I want to translate it and plug it into a different culture, right? And well, these people speak Spanish, so I'm going to do this TV ad in Spanish, or I'm going to put this product and I use it for breakfast here, but I'm going to plug it in, or I use it for shots in alcohol. And no, I want it to actually be a sipping thing. And you just want to plug and play, right? That's the scale. But in order to do that, you need to understand like the true like value for that culture. It's not just the language, for example, like not just, hey, put it in Spanish. That's one element of culture, is language. Fine, it's Spanish. But what are the other ones? Like, what do people value? What other sets of norms? What other sets of symbols that they care about? So for example, if you choose fashion, well, what's sexy has been redefined by younger generations. And we talked about this. Like, well, I grew up with a generation, let's say, with Brad Pitt, and you choose whomever supermodel of the day, and like female. And now again, like you have different kind of icons and how like Gen Z looks and likes baggy clothes or whatever that may be. And like, that's great. It's just different. And tapping into that will enable to actually like, if you're in the fashion business, like how you tap into what those people really, like that generation, that consumer that you're targeting, that you're trying to win over, care about. Same with sustainability. Like when I do innovations, like it's not just saying, okay, this cardboard is recyclable. Like what does my consumer really care about? And cracking, going back to the values, how do they care about the planet, social justice? Like what are the things that I need to commit to actually be part of their culture, join that conversation? And what I've noticed is like, it's always, most of the time it's an afterthought and not done at the beginning, at the inception of the innovation, the idea. And that's what needs to happen, because the rest spreads, the love spreads. Once you actually crack that, it spreads to the rest. If you actually try to fit it later, it's hard to fit when you build an entire team and then you're trying to fit someone that it wasn't there from the beginning.
As I said, you make this sound very simple, which is great, but I'm sure many people watching us have faced the cultural differences sort of challenge at some point in the process. And there is a big part of the game, which is understanding if there are common threads, you know, where you can make people meet, because precisely understanding cultures is also understanding how unique each one of them are and how you embed this diversity in the process. Can you tell us of an example of project you got involved in where that cultural understanding was the starting point of the innovation and leading to its success?
Yes, and I'm actually really proud of this one. I have two that I'm proud of. I'll try to like sneak the other one in as well later. But this is one actually that I worked on, the Day of the Dead Pop-Tarts. Again, an American brand talking about something that, again, we wanted to do it, sorry, this is the little product, Pop-Tarts. And we want to do it the right way. I was like, okay, how to actually like do something going back to our own values, because again, going on to marketing is like the brand fit on the consumer, but also on us. It has to be true for both of us, and it has to be authentic, right? Like, okay, who we are and how do we talk about this, whatever subject we choose. And we said Day of the Dead. And for us, we didn't want to talk about this. We wanted to talk about this in a very respectful way, trying to actually convey the message that everyone's like have a seat at the table, at the Kellogg's table, in this case, Pop-Tarts. And that's what we believe in. So how do we talk about this, and how do we invite you in a way that is respectful to the community? And also something that I have at my desk every day, which is walk the talk. Going back to authenticity. How do I respect those norms and values? So everyone's seen the movie Coco, and like, okay, I could have done like, you know, let's do an alebrije, some magical creatures, and like call it a day. And like, no, it's not about that. I actually really went deep, going back to the insights. It's going deep to, okay, what does this mean to the Mexican community? Not even just in the United States, but like Mexico, like how this started. And I'm not Mexican. So it's really building an exercise of empathy. I might speak Spanish, but if you've noticed, Argentinians were Italians that speak Spanish. So I move my hands like that, basically. But how do you actually go into the cultural element of what does this mean? So I did research with the Mexico team, with the US Latino team, like the BERGs, the ERGs, the employee resource groups, again, like trying to make it authentic. And I discovered, again, I learned, I humbled myself and learned that the way in Mexico is said is Dia de Muertos, not Dia de los Muertos. So instead of Day of Dead, that is Dia, like Day of Dead. And it made the proposition more authentic. Then when you chose what are the symbols to put in the food, I thought again like the alebrijes, the magical creatures were like, you know, oh my God, I watched too much Coco. No, the number one term actually was Mexico. Like, so in social media and social listening was Mexico. It's a very Mexican thing. It's a very Mexican holiday, and it means a lot. And again, if you want to do this right, like do it the proper way, that actually tapping into culture in a way that is respectful, mindful, and really hits hard on like what it means to that culture. And then the other component is like, don't do it just for the culture, in this case, Mexicans or Mexican Americans, but with that community, not just for the community, but with the community. And that's when we also decided to actually get Latino artists and actually sponsor this and give grants to the Latino artist community, because that's what Pop Arts is about, pop art. That's why you got the name as well. So again, bringing a holistic consumer proposition, not just the product. I don't use the term product, I use the word consumer proposition, because it's truly holistically, and it goes back all the way back on like, what's that need and what's that cultural tapping that you're doing into whatever segment that this may be. In the United States was Latinos, but it could be anything for the matter. But this one's actually one that I'm really proud, because it was truly authentic. The flavor, the food, how we came to life, and how we tapped this in a way that it was extremely respectful for the community and was really well received by the community. So that's actually when you're like, that's the measure of success for me, when the community actually like appreciates it versus like, I know what you're trying to do. This was not a gimmicky thing. Actually, it was not about the sales. It was more about the tapping into community and tapping into like the next generation of Pop-Tarts fans.
I love it. I love the fact that it's all about the people, right? Whether it's understanding the people you're selling to or bringing them together. Because at the end of the day, as you said, you had ERGs internally who brought their knowledge and insight into the culture, but also the artists. So I really like that. I think it's a very inclusive approach, and it's very relevant, and that's probably why it's very relevant.
Everyone has to have that approach, and again, and even the workspace, like different cultures in our own workspace, like how we communicate, what our norms, values, symbols, and languages, like how do we do that? That creates more efficient teams, both again internally and also for the consumer. The consumer gets the best of us when we actually are cracking our own cultural code, and we do that at Kellogg's, and we not just a respect, but the key word being empathy. And to create empathy, it's understanding. And to understand is, again, going back to like going up in the framework, really get that insight, get like how people interact, how they like to be addressed, how they like to be, how they're receiving and how they're actually giving communications. Again, we're not going to do therapy, how they give love, how they receive love, but it's basically that, it's being human.
Lovely. I love that. So how does it compare working? I mean, when we met, you were working globally, and you now have a domestic role in the US, which is also a very diverse market. But how does it compare to work in culture and the understanding of culture to drive innovation at one level and the other?
Beyond the personal excitement of, again, me, I love being like around different cultures and learning, and I get excited about that. From a marketing standpoint, at least from the rigor of the marketing approach, as I said before, it shouldn't be different. And I mean that in terms of, if you apply the framework, if you actually build the empathy and crack that cultural code that you're trying to tap into, then you will be able to scale it and make it a global proposition, brand, service, whatever you're doing. So it shouldn't be different in that sense. So going back to like understanding what are you trying to tap into, who's your target consumer? How is that target consumer interacting in a globalized world? So it's even more globalized. So even language among teenagers today, like no matter where you're from, sure, I'm excited with that. Like in most of the world that you have access to social media and they're connecting, again, they don't even need to speak the same language. They're connecting through a video, a dance, an emoji, or whatever that may be. And that's already building a culture in itself in a globalized world. So is it different? Yes, of course, we're not exactly, and that's the beauty of differences. It's trying to find that human truth across that fabric across the entire spectrum that you're able to scale. That's the challenge for companies and brands that actually want to go from a domestic market going global. How do you find the scalability? Not just from like a resource supply chain standpoint and R&D, but also, again, like the most importantly, how you tap and build a consumer proposition that you can make a global item and satisfy global needs in that sense. So it is different, yes, still, of course, absolutely. We're all very different. Everyone's unique, and I love that about us humans. That's the beauty of it, how rich we can keep learning from each other, that the rich of culture, the richness of cultures, but also it's also cool when you see the scalability and you can actually find that human truth to tap into.
Well, actually, you're talking about scaling, and I think there is. So we talked about the culture as the starting point, but obviously there is also sustaining the innovation in its life cycle. And I remember seeing figures in retail in the US market, the number of innovations that come out on an ongoing basis, but a few months later, probably 90% of them are gone and they're off the shelves because they didn't work, basically. So thinking that culture evolves all the time, that, you know, our audiences are more and more fragmented and we're looking more at subgroups, how do you work that out? How do you keep up with all these changes?
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge. And again, I said before, like the oldest tradition, and tradition means that no changes, is that things change. And culture, going back, I'm connecting here all the dots now. Like, so when you actually think about culture, culture is about cultivating and tending to. So it's something that keeps growing, you're nurturing. So as cultures evolved, as generations evolved, the needs that you're satisfying with that product or service will evolve. So for example, when a product, again, like you and I grew up with, might be in the future something, if you see it, that same product, you might love it. I create the love with it for you and I, but we're not consuming that product anymore. Or actually you want me to consume more. So it's a buy rate problem versus like trying to get the new generations to actually try my product or service and start building that emotional bond. That's the penetration problem. So again, basic marketing in that sense. But again, identifying what are the problems that you're trying to solve, that will actually help you understand what's the role of that innovation. Are you trying to, again, like drive penetration and build an emotional connection with that consumer? Or are you trying to actually get more that consumer who really loves you and has the loyalty with your brand to actually buy more and like build a product for that? It sounds basic, but those are the elements of like how you keep tapping into culture. And again, like in the journey, that's the key word, in the journey of culture, how do you address in each moment, what do they need? Again, same as in life, like when you're like a first-time parent, when you graduate from high school, first-time parent, first house, whatever, you're a grandparent, like different stages of life, same as different lifestyle of the consumer, life stage of the consumer. So how do you tap into that? Well, what's those cultural elements for that generation now? Again, that went up in age, but they had the same 4 elements that grew up with things. So you're going to get the nostalgia element instead of like the excitement pop culture one now. But again, it's still cool. And the brands that actually succeed are the ones that become total market. That again, like they got you here and this generation, the younger generation still love you. You're still cool with the young kids and they will go with you all the way until the end of your days.
I have a couple of questions from the audience that are interesting. So I'll run through them. With conscious of time, we only have 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
One from Mike who asks, what is your starting point when you're taking a consumer proposition from one culture to another? And do you take the code and look for cultures with similar elements, or are there any expected overlaps you found over time?
That's a great question. So again, particularly in the US, again, we're all immigrants, so it's easy to trace, like it's easier to trace the US or like America. With every like different journeys with different ethnicities. So again, I'm being extremely respectful, like how cultures came like to America. Understanding that journey will create more impactful propositions. So like the journey of the people actually in this market. Same with Europe, same with Asia, same with you name it. Doesn't matter. The point being is understanding that journey and like again the culture, where they came from, how do they experience today and what's their future? Like, what are they seeing for the future? Understanding, going deep into that sense, will not to my surprise, because I believe in this, but it was very amazing to see that it's more, and I sound like a politician now, it's more than unite us than it doesn't. The journey and the struggles of one community might be shared by another community. Very different experience, but it's more what unites us. And once you start getting into the cultural code of like, sure, we're different, we speak different language, we have different symbols. We might have different color of skin, but you know what? Our values and our norms, trust me, they're so strong. We share the same, whatever that may be, generationally, from an ethnicity standpoint, whatever that may be. Once you start cracking that insight, you realize, okay, then I can scale this, right? So for example, I always bring this example when, what was it? The 2018? I can't remember, like it was the boom of like, it was a perfect, at least for the African-American community in the United States, like it was Black Panther coming out, the Nigerian soccer team, their Nike kit sold out in like 30 minutes in a country that they don't even play soccer. Men, at least, it's not the primary sport. Women, they're phenomenal. I'm not even going to talk about women. They're like from another planet. But the men, again, it's not the most popular sport. It sold out in 30 minutes. I couldn't get it. I was Argentinian, like trying to buy this, and I buy Messi shirts. I'm like, still like, and then of course the French national team. Again, that was quite a success here as well. Like Paul Pogba became quite a celebrity, not just because of Manchester United. Like it's because of like those cultural needs that cross over. And you're like, why are we talking soccer? Paul Pogba in the United States. I'm like, well, that's culture right there. Like there's something beautiful about culture and needs of a community that wants to express themselves. Same with Latinos. They want to, like, it's not the same to be a Latino 30 years ago, 40 years ago versus today. Like today, Latinos are 100% Latino, 100% Americans in the United States. And they're proud of it. They don't need to blend in and drink whatever like their American Anglo-Saxon counterparts drink. They're proud to be who they are. And that's a beautiful change. And that's scalable across the globe these days, thanks to probably, again, like communications, internet, social media, virality. So unexpected, yes, every day. Sorry, going back to the answering the question, unexpected, every day there's something new to learn. And that's the exciting piece of our jobs, right? Like it's humans, it's people. So you're always going to learn something new and build that empathy with something new. I find it fascinating.
Lovely. We only have 1 minute. So quickly, between the last question from Sanjeev and the one innovation that has really impressed you. So first I'll ask Sanjeev's question. How do you see the connection between product packaging and cross-cultural innovation concept?
Packaging is, again, in a product, not a service, but in a product, packaging, it's the moment of truth. Like packaging is critical. Like it's really the moment where all the work that you do up here, like marketing, innovation, the whole thing, brand, the campaign, all the stuff that you do, at the end of the day boils down to that moment where the consumer sees your box and grabs it. So if anything, this needs to be eye-catching, needs to deliver on everything that consumer wants and needs, because it is the moment of truth. It really boils down to those 2 seconds, in my case, on shelf when people are scoping new stuff. It boils down to that moment. So if anything, yes, it's critical. Yes, goes without saying it's critical because it's the most important piece of real estate that you have. Not the TV ad, it's this. This is the most important. This is sacred for people who are doing products. Services, difference, but same concept. And then something that I've seen that blew my mind, again, coming from alcohol, I'm going to say it, White Claw. White Claw put everyone to shame. Like White Claw overnight rose to a multi-billion-dollar brand in the United States, hard seltzer, for those who know like what it is, and pretty much took the market by storm. And no heritage, a brand with no heritage. And big companies were thinking about it for years, never did it, and with their constraints. But overnight, they became a huge brand, and basically it's because they tapped into culture. Again, it had no heritage. The product in itself wasn't that revolutionary, in my opinion, but still. And here you go. And that's why you see Tesla as well. Like, why does Tesla and electric cars are so relevant these days? Because this generation and younger generations care more about the environment than our generations. So. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Juan. I'm sorry we have to go because we're running out of time. I could have stayed here much longer. Thank you so much again for all the insights and the passion.
Thank you.